What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today we are going to talk about something at Cedar Point, like I always do. Yes, today is going to be the video I focus on the antique cars. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the antique cars and this and that, but today I specifically want to focus on what could possibly replace this classic attraction. I thought long and hard about this, and I mixed in information from what we already know, mixed with my little bit of speculation. So, without this bitter batter, let's get right into the video. This is Cedar Flags, and today, I will be making several predictions for the replacement of Frontier Town's antique cars. So before getting into possible replacements, I want to talk about the plot of land that the antique cars sit on, or now, I guess, sat on. So the plot of land is 350 feet long. It is 160 feet wide at its widest point. Of course, it differentiates in between 130 and 160 throughout multiple times in the plot. It's around 1.5 acres, but I can't forget the fact that there is an area of water on the right side of the plot. Now, this is important because this area of water and this covered bridge are confirmed to stay as decoration and possibly a walking path. The plot of land is just a flat sheet of grass mostly, so we don't have to worry about any issues with the terrain. If you haven't been to Cedar Point and don't know where the location of this is, it is right in the center of Frontier Town. In fact, all of the Frontier Town attractions surround the antique cars. It's right by Skyhawk, Maverick, Steel Vengeance, Cedar Creek Mine Ride, just about everything. You can't go to Frontier Town without seeing the cars. This area also has lots of trees. Of course, with Cedar Point, we know that they don't have any issue in tearing down a few trees, but my prediction is that they will keep some to keep that scenic value. And once again, we saw that they are going to keep the water and the bridge. Now, Cedar Point has already said that there is going to be a walking area through that bridge and a little bit of a commons area with benches and sort. So, let's talk about that. The total area of the land then will be around 1.2 acres that we could see being used in the near future. So, what could replace the antique cars and fill in this plot of land? The first thing I want to talk about is a restaurant. Now, we already know that a restaurant is going to be in this location. At least we are 99.9% sure. Cedar Point has said next year that they are going to add a brand new culinary location to Frontier Town, so we could automatically assume that it is going to be in this location, and take up at least part of it. Now, when they say culinary location, that opens up a bunch of options. Of course, in simple terms, that is a restaurant, but it could be something more. I thought of one out of two possibilities. The first one is, of course, just a normal-sized restaurant. Just like the Corral or Backbeat Q or Hugo's, this would just be another place to eat and add on to the vast array of eating options for Cedar Point. Cedar Point is expanding their dining options a lot recently and has added a handful of new restaurants in the past 5 years. I think this is a great idea because Cedar Point is in high demand of food, and just about a half a decade ago people were complaining about the food options. So another restaurant would be great, but I thought of a separate option. This is something I haven't heard yet, and I do definitely think this is the less possible option, but imagine a massive food court area. Something similar to Harmony Hall or the Fest House at Carowinds and Kings Island respectively. These are pretty big culinary areas that have multiple restaurants within a singular food court. These also come with a stage, so you could have shows while eating. I think this would be a very good idea, but I think the main problem of that is it would be pretty big and take up most, or if not the entire plot of land. And that would leave out anything else. Now with the restaurant option, you could easily fit other attractions within the remaining parts of the plot of land. There is no way an entire restaurant's going to take up over an acre in size. That would be insane. But for here, I'm leaning towards the regular old restaurant option. Though, with a food court, I could definitely see them putting some fast food locations that are within the park in this location. So, some places like the Subway or Panda Express could be replaced with something else, like a new restaurant or a new ride. But once again, I am leaning towards the good old-fashioned singular restaurant. The next option I want to talk about isn't necessarily a replacement, but something I could see happening with a replacement. This is for Cedar Point to vouch for wider midways. Now, if you've been to Frontier Town, you could tell, first of all, it is an extremely crowded area. In fact, I think it might be the most crowded area in the park on any given day, which is weird because it's located in the back of the park, a full mile away from the front entrance. Anyway, this is a very popular area. A lot of people love this area, love to walk around, and love the rides in that area, me included. And this mixed in with the very thin paths around the Frontier Town antique cars can make a bit of a bottleneck and a little bit of overcrowding. Well, this is Cedar Point. In some of the paths by Maverick, one of the most popular rides in the park, are as thin as 25 to 30 feet. Now, that doesn't seem too thin, but think about it. 30 feet is still pretty thin for a massive midway. So what I think they could do is dig into the Frontier Town antique car plot a little bit and add some more pavement to add more room for people to walk and make the paths just a little bit wider. I feel like that would make a very big difference in this area of the park, and something we already know once again is the fact that they will be adding paths in common areas near the water and the bridge, which I think will be a very good addition to Frontier Town. Also, Cedar Point, if you're listening to this, please just add a path around the roundup. It's very annoying having to walk around that stand. Anyway, I think this is going to be something that will happen eventually, either wider paths or more paths to distance out the crowds and seem like they have a better flow. I think the restaurant will do a good job at this, but just in general, widen those paths, Cedar Point. The next thing I want to talk about are flat rides. I think this is something I could definitely see coming to a part of this plot of land in the next coming years. Now, let's talk about some options. There are two separate options I could see, and the first ones are options for a new flat ride. Now, this area is nowhere near as big as some other plots of land, like I said, and with the restaurant taking up some land, even less so. But I feel like they could still add some separate attractions like a flat ride or two here. So let's talk about it. Now, in talking about a new flat ride that Cedar Point should get, just remember there is not a single flat ride that comes with admission of the park that has an inversion. There are no currently operating flat rides that go upside down. You have Max Air, Giant Wheel, the Sky Ride, Skyhawk. None of these rides invert. But they used to have Witch's Wheel, which did, but that's not in the park anymore. So when I think of an option, I think of something that inverts. And I think the first option that comes to my mind for a brand new spankin' flat ride would be a Mondial Top Scan. I really like the idea of one of these coming to Cedar Point, have a little bit of a western theme to it. They've been adding these to a few of the Cedar Fair parks lately. There's one at Canada's Wonderland, Carowinds, and Knott's Berry Farm. These are very good additions, very compact. I think the only main problem that they would have is reliability, because these rides can break down a lot. Another option I could see is a Gerstlauer Sky Roller. Maybe make it the world's tallest. This would add an interactive flat ride at Cedar Point that inverts. Once again, it can invert, and if you don't want it to invert, well, you don't have to. Maybe they could add 2 of these because capacity would be very low, but I think this is definitely the least likely out of the 3 I have. The final option is definitely the most likely for me. I would love, and I mean love, to see this at Cedar Point. Imagine an air race at Cedar Point. Oh my goodness, I would love this here. This would be such a great option. This ride has a very high capacity. Granted, the dispatches can be a pretty long wait, but anyway, I really feel like with the ride's high capacity and fun layout with inversions, it could be a good time. Now, let's talk about a relocation option. Now, I'm not talking about relocations from other parks, but from Cedar Point themselves. They have relocated several flat rides throughout the decades, so it's definitely not that big of a problem. So, what rides could I see being relocated to this area? Maybe rides like Giant Wheel, Tiki Twirl, Troika, some of the rides at Kitty Kingdom, Max Air. What do all these rides have in common? They are near the former plot of Wicked Twister. Now, Wicked Twister is a very long but thin plot of land, so this would definitely widen it and make it a much bigger and more reasonable plot of land to add a new coaster. I feel like Cedar Point wants to add their next roller coaster here. We'll get to that. So I feel like they should be able to clear up more room here. The giant wheel would fit perfectly into this area, and I personally think would be a great fit, but it seems like a lot of people disagree with me on that. It would be a good observation ride in the area, because let's face it, all of the other rides here are either coasters or thrill rides, and all of the observation rides at Cedar Point are currently in the front. You have Giant Wheel, Wind Seeker, and the Sky Ride all right next to each other. Heck, at one point you had a fourth with Space Spiral. All of these observation rides were in one point of the park. So if we put the Giant Wheel back into its original home of Frontier Town, I think that would be a genius idea. All of these rides in this area would be genius for me, just so they would make more room for, once again, the brand new edition coming, well, eventually. Okay, I know what you want me to talk about. Yes, a coaster. Now, let's be honest here, this is a very small plot of land, and with the restaurant, it's going to be much smaller. Let's say the restaurant takes about a third to a half of an acre, and counting the water area, well, we only have about a half an acre left. This is a pretty small area, and I cannot see a roller coaster here. I'm sorry. Not even a family one. Maybe if they didn't add the restaurant, I could see something like that, but with the restaurant add-on and the commons area near the water, I definitely see this not being a possibility at all, for two reasons. One, like I said, it's small, and two, Frontier Town is loaded with coasters. You have Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Maverick, Steel Vengeance. You have a great family coaster in Cedar Creek, and two of some of the best roller coasters on Earth. Some people might say these are the top 2 coasters on Earth, period. They have a great collection, and so they definitely wouldn't add a new coaster here. Definitely not a thrilling coaster to compete with Maverick and Steel Vengeance. Now, I think the new coaster plot's going to be reserved for somewhere else. So, what do I think about a coaster being here? I'm sorry, I can't see it. I think a new flat ride here would be incredible, or even a relocated flat ride, but I definitely can't see a coaster here. So for my final answer of the video, what will replace the antique cars? I predict a commons area near the water, add some chairs and tables for a new restaurant, definitely a western themed restaurant, and then at the other side of the plot of land near Skyhawk, add 2 new flat rides, and maybe possibly an old relocated one. If they don't add 2 flat rides here, maybe something giant like one massive flat ride, like let's say the Giant Wheel. But anyway, what do you think about this? What do you think is going to replace the antique cars in Frontier Town? If you think it could possibly be a new roller coaster, I would love to hear why you think so. Anyway, this is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.